faraway, beautiful places of the real world brought to life, but also the world of fairy tales and fantasy. Pinocchio, the Three Little Pigs, Snow White, Little Red Riding Hood, and a host of others. What has brought this new delight in seeing to both young and old? Well, that's a remarkable story of a homegrown product that is now famous around the world. Invented in Portland and manufactured in Portland, this product is known and enjoyed today in faraway India, in Moscow's Central Library, throughout Europe and all of Latin America. There are no language barriers for stereo pictures. This is just a hint of what you're going to see tonight at one of Portland's most famous industrial plants. We have 3 live television cameras here at the world headquarters for 3D colored pictures. And believe me, they're going to be kept mighty busy in the next half hour. I'm Bill Nielsen, and this is Success Story.
Success Story, an on-the-spot live telecast brought to you each week from somewhere in the great Northwest as a public service by Richfield, makers of the complete line of Years Ahead petroleum products. Tonight, our Success Story cameras have come to Sawyer's Incorporated, located just 9 miles southwest of Portland on the main highway between Beaverton and Tigard at Progress, Oregon. Here on a 14-acre tract surrounded by the rich natural greenery of the Northwest, the great Sawyer's plant is housed in 10 buildings, about 4 acres of floor space, close to 200,000 square feet of working area. So you can see why Bill Nielsen said our TV cameras will be busy tonight. As you would guess from the plant layout, Sawyer's operations are tremendously varied. Best known for ViewMaster 3D, Sawyer's also manufactures another line of stereo viewers in a separate division. And they produce both stereo and 2-dimensional viewers and slide projectors. To go with these product lines, Sawyer's turns out in tremendous quantities 3 different kinds of color pictures. And to get the pictures, but let's take things one at a time. We are now in the injection molding department, where plastic parts for viewers and projectors are made. You're watching the very latest in plastic molding equipment. Injection molding means that the plastic material is melted in a heating cylinder and then in a liquid state injected into the forming die. Operator Dorothy Schuth is now running easy edit slide trays for Sawyer's 500 projectors. Many other parts, including viewer lenses, are made in these ultra-modern machines. In this instance, we have a plastic such as polystyrene, which can be melted. Another kind of plastic, known as phenolic, is used in making viewer cases, and that takes us to compression molding. The phenolic materials come to the plant in a powder form. From large hoppers on the floor above, the powder comes down by gravity feed to the presses. It is then compressed at a temperature of 350 degrees. This combination of heat and pressure changes the powder to a solid plastic as it is molded to the form of the die. It takes about a minute in the press. And if we move on to the next press down the line, we should have a part about ready to come out. The piece is kicked out by air pressure. The next step is flashing or knocking off the rough edges. Obviously, with this type of molding, a viewer case is made 1/2 at a time, either front or back, and the finished parts are brought together in assembly. But that is another chapter in the story. Enough to say now that Sawyer's Incorporated is, among other things, a volume manufacturer in the plastic field and a Northwest pioneer in plastics. We'll see what happens in assembly as soon as our traveling camera has time enough to get there.
It's a real privilege for me to introduce now the president of Sawyer's Incorporated, Mr. Bob Brose. Bob, what is Sawyer's position in the world of 3D or stereo pictures?
Sawyer's began manufacturing ViewMaster stereoscopes and reels over 20 years ago. We feel that ViewMaster is largely responsible for the present popularity of stereo. Actually, Sawyer's produce about 90% of the world's output, and this would not be possible if it were not for our fine staff of wonderful employees.
How many pictures have been turned out by Sawyer's over the past 15 years?
We were looking at those figures the other day and astounded. Well over 3 billion in the last 15 years.
Now, actually, Sawyer's produces not only from the Portland plant, but others as well, does it not?
Yes, we produce a good deal from our Portland plant, but we have a factory in Brussels, one in Australia, and we'll soon have one in India.
The word TrueView is one that I've heard a great deal of around here. Would you tell us a little about it?
In 1951, Sawyer's acquired TrueView, which is stereo in another format. And TrueView is sold through variety stores and toy outlets, whereas ViewMaster is sold in thousands of camera, gift, drug, and department stores in the United States and throughout the world.
Thanks very much, Bob.
We are now in Sawyer's assembly department. Here the parts for the various viewers, projectors, and related products come together. Besides the plastic molding shops, which we have seen, we are surrounded by many other industrial operations, for nearly all conversion work is handled at this plant. This includes punch presses stamping out thousands of metal parts, an engineering and product development shop, a painting and finishing department, all the facilities of a modern light metals plant. In mechanical production alone, and that's only part of the story, Sawyer's is a converter of both plastics and metals and a maker of high-quality, high-precision optical devices. Viewers and projectors for regular 35mm slides and for giant super slides. Viewers and projectors for two-dimensional viewing, as well as viewing in magical 3D. Let's begin with the granddaddy of the line, so to speak, the ViewMaster Stereoscope. Ever since Sawyer's introduced the startling realism and dramatic impact of three-dimensional pictures in color, ViewMasters have been coming off the assembly tables at a steady pace. Although Sawyer's was already 24 years old when William Gruber applied for patents on his stereoscope in 1938, that year marked a momentous turning point in company history. By 1939, a few people in Portland were able to buy ViewMaster when Sawyer sent up the first trial balloon on their new product. For the public in general, ViewMaster was introduced in 1940 at the World's Fairs in both San Francisco and New York. 1 year later, over 1,000 dealers were selling all the ViewMaster products Sawyer's could produce. Before that year, 1941, was over, the bombs had landed on Pearl Harbor, and soon production for dealers was strictly limited. But the skyrocketing product did not escape the notice of the Army and the Navy. Here was a visual instruction tool of unusual value. What could be better for teaching range estimation and naval ship identification than 3D, in color? So from late 1942 till the end of the war, most of Sawyer's production went to the armed forces.
Let's talk for just a moment here to Bill Horn. Bill, how long have you been with Sawyer?
Almost 8 years, Bill.
Would you hazard a guess as to how many ViewMasters you've turned out in that time?
Oh, about several million.
That's an awful lot of them. Thanks a million, Bill. Let's move over now and talk to a young lady by the name of Barbara Day. Barbara, what are you working on here specifically?
This is the Panaview 2.
Now, these are for 2x2 slides?
Yes, that's right.
Big Panaview Supers as well as ordinary 2x2s, right? Thank you, Barbara. Over here now is the projector assembly foreman, Bob Smith. Bob, will you tell us just how many projectors you turn out here, how many different types?
Well, we have 3 models of projectors, Bill. We have the ViewMaster projector, the Stereomatic, and
Could you show me some of them here specifically?
Yes, you bet, Bill. Here I have the Super Slide projector of the remote control model. This here is manufactured right down here on the assembly line over here that we're seeing now.
Oh, these are on the assembly line at present, correct?
Correct.
Now, maybe you can outline some of the assembly steps that are going through this.
Well, Bill, we have 2 main sections of the projector, which is the casting and the base plate. They're assembled at each end of the table, at other end of the table, and meet in the center and become a finished projector.
What goes on the other line on the other side?
That is our quality control and our checking booth over there.
What are some of the checks that the viewers go through at that point?
They're checked for visible defects and also mechanical.
And ultimately, at the other end of the line are packaged and go out to satisfied Sawyer customers all over the world, Bob.
That is correct.
Thanks very much.
You bet.
As we have said, Sawyer's is engaged not only in mechanical production. For nearly 50 years, Sawyer's of Portland has been in the picture business, and in that business in a big way. Today, Sawyer's photographic staff practically covers the earth. There are thousands upon thousands of original color pictures in this constant temperature cold vault. And for every original here, there are 3 more just like it in outside vaults, just in case. 6 duplicating cameras work on nothing but ViewMaster stereo slides. Note that there are 2 originals of each scene, one for the right eye and one for the left. Both right and left eye views are duplicated on special 16mm Kodachrome stock. This film has sprocket holes on one side only, and what would be the soundtrack area in a sound movie is used to make a much larger than normal 16mm picture. In fact, the total area is 80% larger. In the camera room, ViewMaster 3D pictures are reproduced at the rate of 960 a minute. As you can well imagine, Sawyer's is one of the world's largest users of Kodachrome film. But that isn't the only color film they use. You will remember Sawyer's entirely separate line of 3D pictures and viewers for the toy shop trade called True View. The card-mounted transparencies in this line are each just a half at 35mm frame. In other words, one 35mm frame gives you both right eye and left eye views. In the production of these pictures, Sawyer's uses another type of duplicating. The original here is negative color, what you may know as Kodacolor. If you've ever used this film, you know that grass is red and fire engines are green in the original negative. Of course, everything comes out fine after printing. At this station, we see the duplicating process for True View stereo slides, or actually the printing from negative color using 35mm stock on the printing reel. At the next station in the camera room, Sawyer's Super PanaView slides are copied. This too is a negative color process using 55mm stock on the printing reel. These widescreen slides increase brilliance and sharpness and give you a new panoramic view. Almost twice the transparency area of the ordinary 35mm slides. Sawyer's produces these big-as-life scenes for all viewers and projectors that accept the standard slides. And there are thrilling PanaView scenic slides from every state in the Union. Only travelogues from America, Africa, Asia, Europe, Pacific Islands, South America, and the West Indies, but also complete stories and adventures for children and a variety of educational subjects. That gives you an idea of what we mean when we say Sawyer's is in the picture business in a big way. To get a still better idea, let's take just one example. The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II is covered in a 3-reel packet of 21 full-color pictures. Since that kind of run was repeated several times, Sawyer's has turned out millions of pictures of Queen Elizabeth, just one subject. In a few weeks, the pictures of the royal wedding of the Princess Margaret will be on the market. And there are well over 1,000 in the complete line. Our number 3 camera has now moved from the duplicating department to the processing plant. Film exposed in the camera room can be processed here the same day. And this was the second plant outside Eastman Kodak Company to process Kodachrome color film for its own use. The control panels here meter the flow of solutions to the processing tank upstairs and provide electrical controls to maintain temperatures within 1/10 of 1 degree. The film moves through processing at the rate of 120 feet a minute. Still, a piece of Kodachrome travels for nearly an hour before all steps in processing are completed, moving through numerous different solutions in stainless steel tanks and finally into a drying section. Solutions are mixed in these replenisher tanks and then pumped upstairs. Out of processing, the film moves on to inspection. Here, ViewMaster transparencies, hundreds of feet at a time, are inspected and wound into production run lengths. The pictures then move on to the production department for mounting. In a minute, we'll give you the first public view of that amazing machine operation. You are viewing Success Story, a series of on-the-spot telecasts originating each week somewhere in the great Northwest and brought to you live and direct as a public service by Richfield. Tonight's Success Story is originating at Sawyer's Incorporated, Portland's world headquarters for stereoscopes and 3D color pictures. We are telecasting direct from the great Sawyer plant at Progress, Oregon. All the production facilities that we have watched in operation this evening grew out of a photo finishing studio that began 46 years ago, developing and printing pictures for the Owl Drugstore. Bought out in the early years by Edwin E. Mayer and 2 associates. Sawyer's, for the 1920s, was nationally known in the picture postcard business and already expanding at their old location on Southwest 20th near Multnomah Civic Stadium. But the spectacular ViewMaster success has come to pass in the last 20 years. You are watching the stamping of ViewMaster reel blanks right now. Every time the press comes down, somewhere in the world another ViewMaster reel is sold.
Meet Sawyer's Vice President in charge of manufacturing, Les Paulson. Les, we of Success Story got a big kick of watching the various manufacturing processes. I'm sure, however, that this is the most unusual that we've seen yet.
Well, we do have a very unique operation. We make about 80% of all the parts for our products.
Every new product, I would imagine, creates new production problems, correct?
That's true. We develop specialized production equipment to take care of that.
Is this machine before us here one that has been designed for a specific job here at Sawyer?
Yes, this was built by our own engineers. This is a ViewMaster reel machine. It mounts a pair of three-dimensional pictures at each one of these 7 stations on these reels, and then it is sealed and printed at the rate of 1,500 per hour.
Obviously, something as complex as this must have some sort of a central control system, am I right?
Yes, in this drawer is our controls for all the various operations.
All controlled by cams, correct?
All controlled by cams.
Certainly, if I hadn't seen this with my own eyes, Les, I wouldn't have believed it possible. It's been real interesting, and thank you.
Each machine here not only places and heat seals pictures in perfect registration, it also places a laminated aluminum and glassine cover on at the end, and then prints title and subtitles on the reel. A tiny little printing press takes care of that as the reels come off. A single machine can turn out dozens of reels in 1 minute. True View cards are mounted in somewhat similar fashion on other specially built machinery. Then, row upon row of ViewMaster reels, or True View cards as the case may be, are inspected and packaged for storing or shipping to all parts of the world. As for the packets of 3 reels, like those of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth and many others, they are assembled in another fascinating machine especially adapted for the purpose. This is known technically as a collating machine, which means that it arranges things in the proper order. In addition to the 3 reels, it is now adding a story folder. Tied in with the same operation is a machine that makes the packets. Everything is then tucked neatly into the envelope, and it is ready to give somebody, somewhere, a 3-dimensional view of scenes at the South Pole, the San Diego Zoo, or perhaps the Rose Festival at Portland, Oregon. Not only does Sawyer's photographic staff cover the world, Sawyer's creates, yes, creates from scratch, pictures of their own. Even though we don't have 3D TV, you can see the amazing detail in the 3-dimensional characters that have been developed in the creative art department. The artists actually are pioneers in a new medium. Besides sculpturing the figures, they build sets, paint, sew, patiently work out lighting problems, and perform magic that is peculiar to this unique art form. Remembering that stereo photography is based on right eye and left eye views, you can understand that studio work offers unusual opportunities. Instead of working with a 2-eyed camera, in the studio they're using 1 lens only. They shoot the left eye view, then rack over for the right eye view. Here's where the opportunity for magic comes in. If you move foreground figures to the left when the camera lens is moved to the right, you make those foreground figures come closer in the final stereo scene. This is a special effect that might be used. A bit of 3D magic that is common to most fairy tale pictures is the method of making small figures appear life-size. If you use a 2-lens stereo camera, the eyes are fixed a normal 2.5 inches apart. But here, by controlling rack over distance, they can bring the eyes closer together. It makes the figures appear larger, but what they're really doing is bringing you, the viewer, down to scale with the characters. The whole business of interocular distance is carefully calibrated on the basis of shooting distance.
Let me introduce now a lady who has 14 years' experience in 3D work, Florence Thomas. Florence, will you explain this set for us, please?
It's another scene from The Shoemaker and the Elves. I make the figures of ceramic clay, and the set and props are made to fit the story.
One thing that has fascinated me, and that is this vapor that we see here made of cotton. How do you make it look realistic in the actual picture?
During part of the exposure, the cotton is taken out, which makes it transparent. Howard Haydorf, who photographs and lights these things, prepares those tricks.
What type of material do you use on the walls?
That's an asbestos cement. It works very nice for brickwork or stonework.
I can certainly see why the youngsters get such a lot of fun out of these 3D stories. They look extremely realistic. Thank you, Florence.
Thank you.
Let's move over now and talk to another one of the outstanding creative artists here at Sawyer's, Joe Liptak. Joe, if I may interrupt you for a moment here, I'll ask you what you're working with at present.
This is a tiger used in one of our fairy tale productions.
What type of material do you use in this?
I use a wire armature, foam rubber body covered with a fabric to represent fur. It's flexible.
I noticed that the heads are removable. What's the reason for that?
Yes, I designed the heads so they can be interchangeable for different scenes. Even one head has two expressions so that we can use it separately in different scenes.
Now, in the case of other figures that you might create, can you remove other limbs and so forth?
Yes, I have a series of arms and legs that are interchangeable for different scenes.
Certainly they do a beautiful job in illustrating the subject at hand. Thank you, Joe. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
A few minutes ago, we said that Sawyer's creative department starts from scratch. Long before the scenes appear in the form of stereo color, they begin to take shape on a storyboard like this. Just as in the case of a motion picture, a script is written and edited, storyboards are checked, revised, and finally accepted before the long and patient work of production gets underway. In addition to stories in the public domain, like Gulliver's Travels and The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, Sawyer's has done a great deal of contract work in other properties. Huckleberry Hound, Bugs Bunny, and a number of Walt Disney stories, for example.
I'd like very much now to introduce the man in charge of this magic land of make-believe. First, Cole, the art director of Sawyer's Incorporated. First, suppose we start right from the beginning. How does one of these stories start?
Well, Bill, we start with this verbal script, or written script, to get the proper sequence into our pictures. Once the script is established, then we work out these rough pencil storyboards, as in these two rows. Then these show further firming up of the visual approach in 2D.
How many storyboards will you make for a given story?
We usually do 7 story scenes or 21 scene stories.
Depending upon the length of the story.
That's right.
How long does it take from the initial script through artwork, sculpturing, and so forth to the finished 3D color picture?
It depends, but normally 10 to 11 months, 12 at the most.
I can certainly see what you mean when you say that there's far more to this than just sculpturing, artwork, and photography. You're actually working with an entirely new and unique medium, aren't you?
Well, that's certainly true, Bill.
Thanks very much, Carl.
To fully appreciate what is meant when stereo pictures are referred to as a new medium, you must consider not only the startling realism of hundreds of travelogues, the remarkable children's stories, the lifelike representation of such world events as a presidential inauguration, and studies of wildflowers and insects in vivid 3D, you must also consider ViewMaster reels produced by Sawyer's licensed producers for commercial accounts. These are used for sales and advertising purposes by many major American companies like airlines, dress manufacturers, and machinery companies to show a complete line of products that is impossible for a salesman or dealer to carry. A 3D picture gives a salesman a powerful sales tool, but in true perspective. In many ways, ViewMaster 3D does what no other medium can. It is an axiom at Sawyer's that the more complex the subject, the better 3D illustrates it. Repeatedly through the years, scientists and educators have come to Sawyer's and said, "Why don't you do this?"
With me right now is George Patton, Sawyer's man in charge of special products. George, I'll let you explain what we have here on the desk.
I'll be very glad to, Bill. First, though, I should like to explain that those qualities of stereo, which are so valuable in the picturing of the products or services of industry, are even more valuable in education. Things seen in stereo, Bill, capture immediate attention. And they're more thoroughly understood and more easily remembered. Here we have a few of our own educational publications on display, all of them employing ViewMaster reels. The first is a stereoscopic atlas of human anatomy for the medical profession. The author is Dr. Bassett of the Stanford Medical School, who performed the dissections. The photography was done by William Gruber, the inventor of the ViewMaster system. Now in the center section here, we have a complete visual presentation of oral surgery and techniques. On this right panel is one of the titles of Sawyer's Correlated Classroom Materials for Primary Grades. And in this product, Bill, the lifelike three-dimension picture creates a lively interest in the story subject so that the primary grader gets a very welcome boost in developing reading skills.
Certainly, stereo has found a very welcome spot in science and education. Thank you, George.
While the future holds bright prospects for new and varied uses of the new medium that came to flower here in the Northwest, Sawyer's Incorporated continues to produce thousands of products and millions of pictures for the markets of the world. Bulk shipments of finished goods leave this factory for Sawyer's large plant in Chicago, which serves most of the states east of the Rockies, while the company serves about 1/3 of its outlets directly from Portland. In the export trade, this factory serves Canada, Africa, Latin America, and some areas in the Orient. Soon, Southeast Asia will be served by a subsidiary in India. Other manufacturing subsidiaries supply the markets of Europe. There is also a subsidiary in Sydney, Australia. Altogether, 91 different markets throughout the world, in fact all dollar markets, know and buy the products of Sawyer's. For a company that started out developing and printing snapshots for the drugstore, Sawyer's has done rather well.
Here we are once again with Mr. Bob Brost, the president of Sawyer's Incorporated, with another man that we all want to meet.
Bill, I'd like to have you meet Mr. William B. Gruber, the inventor of the ViewMaster system. Bill Gruber, meet Bill Nielsen.
How do you do, Bill? What was the inspiration for ViewMaster?
I must say that I was imbued with the desire to create something that the masses could enjoy, because the three-dimensional pictures of old were very expensive and cumbersome to make, and the ViewMaster certainly has overcome this.
Did you have any idea that ViewMaster would grow to such great proportions?
Never such an idea, sir. Never.
Bill, it's been real nice talking to you. And Bob, the sincere thanks of myself and the entire Richfield Success Story crew for all of your hospitality and for a most enjoyable tour here tonight.
Well, thanks to you, Bill, and to Richfield Oil Corporation. All of us at Sawyer's are delighted to have been able to play a part in Richfield's famous success story.
Certainly been a lot of fun on our part, believe me. Friends, we hope that you will join us next Wednesday night at 7, and the subject of Success Story will be something near and dear to the hearts of all of us: bathing suits and sweaters. Richfield Success Story cameras will visit Jensen's Incorporated of Portland, and we hope that you'll be there with us. That's next Wednesday night at 7. Until then, good night.
Success Story, an on-the-spot report, is brought to you by Richfield, makers of 100-plus boron superoctane gasoline and a complete line of years-ahead petroleum products. Next week at the same time, we'll bring you another success story with Bill Nielsen, when our cameras will take you for a behind-the-scenes visit to Jensen Incorporated to see swimsuits and sweaters being manufactured. Need we say more? Be sure to join us then. Until then, this is Ivan Jones saying good night from Richfield.